Good morning, everyone. My name is Steinberg, and I'm the president of the California State Senate. But maybe more importantly, I am privileged to represent the great capital city of Sacramento in the state legislature. Thank you. And I am here to help Sacramento's mayor, Kevin Johnson, kick off Volunteer Sacramento. This is an incredibly exciting and important venture for the people of Sacramento. And I reflect just for a moment on my own childhood growing up in the Bay Area during what I call the pre-Prop 13, 1960s and 1970s. There was always a great sense that when I was a kid that there was always an adult around to make sure that the rec center was open, to make sure that the other community centers had their lights on, to make sure that there was always a coach or an instructor or a drama teacher or somebody, always an adult, to help guide our paths as young people. And over the years, it's no secret that we've lost some sense of that community. In part, it's the fraying of the public infrastructure and the difficulties in keeping the programs that matter so much to young people, and not just young people, our senior citizens and adults of all ages thriving. We're living through an especially difficult time. And that's why what Mayor Johnson is proposing here is so important. If we cannot, through these difficult times, fully fund the programs that are vital to maintaining the quality of life in our communities, we must step forward as volunteers, as Sacramentans, and make sure that everything that is good in this community continues. Everything that is important to a positive path for the young in our community continues. The only way we can do that is to make sure that we all step forward and volunteer our time. You know, volunteering has a different connotation to different people. Some say, geez, that's more time out of my busy life, and I already work hard. But all of us who are involved in community or in one way or another know the real truth, that the greatest joy in life is volunteering. The greatest joy in life is doing something, anything to help others. And there are so many different ways to do it. You can work at a Boys and Girls Club, you can work at a senior center, you can volunteer to pick up trash and clean up the litter in neighborhoods, you can volunteer at school. The beauty of volunteerism is that nobody tells you what you have to do. You get to choose what to do. And so I am grateful to the mayor for instilling such a sense of civic responsibility and of volunteerism back in Sacramento. I join you in your effort. I pledge to put in my 10 hours. Although maybe some might argue that we already put in a few hours. But either way, Mayor, support you in each and every way. Please give a warm welcome to the mayor of the city of Sacramento, Mayor Kevin Johnson.
We gave Darryl a round of applause because of his remarks. Let's give him another round of applause because we have a budget in the state of California. And now that you've gotten your feet wet, let's not wait this long next year to get our... No, don't worry. Okay. All right. So thank you, Senator Steinberg. It's a great opportunity for all of us in Sacramento because our very own Sacramentan Darryl Steinberg is a pro tem of California. So this is a very significant time for all of us in many respects. I think we all know this, and I want to just real quickly have all the elected officials that are here today, please stand real quick if there's any elected officials here. Daryl gets to represent all of them. All right, Daryl Steinberg. We are in some very difficult economic times. I think we all know that. Many families have been hit hard by unemployment, reduced hours, layoffs, and furloughs. But I'm confident that we will emerge through this economic crisis better and stronger than ever before. I'm confident that we can all come together as a city and change our city. And I want to just start really quickly before we get on the rest of the program. Is growing up, my grandfather was a sheet metal worker. Very simple man. Measure twice, cut once. Measure twice, cut once. Very practical, very simple. But the most important thing he instilled in me was the importance of being a good neighbor, the importance of giving back, the importance of community service. And I'll never forget this. We used to go up to Folsom, a little bit outside of Folsom, every weekend. And we would drive back. And every time we would drive back, anytime a car was on the side of the road because it ran out of gas or had a flat tire, he would pull over and we would help it. And as a kid, it's the last thing I want to do. I want to get back, play Little League, go swimming, whatever it happens to be. So this one time we were coming back and I saw a car up about a quarter of a mile on the right, pulled over on the side of the road. And I tried to psych my grandfather out. I pointed to the other side of the freeway and I said, what kind of bird is that standing up there? Flying up there. And he looked and said, I think it's a blue jay. And next thing I knew, we were swerving to the side of the road. So he had peripheral vision. And as a basketball player, that helped me later on in life. But the lesson that he taught me at a young age is that we always have to give back, especially when it's not convenient. It's easy to do something nice for somebody when you have time on your hands or you have extra. But what about when the opportunity presents itself? That's the whole story of a Good Samaritan. And I felt that we in Sacramento can set the bar extremely high during these challenging times. So today I am challenging every resident in Sacramento to be a part of the solution and give true service. We are kicking off Volunteer Sacramento. And our goal in Volunteer Sacramento is to be the #1 city in the state of California when it comes to service hours. The #1 city in the state of California when it comes to service hours. I am challenging every resident in Sacramento to give a minimum of 10 hours over the course of this calendar year. A minimum of 10 hours over the course of this calendar year. That means by the end of the year, we're going to get between 350,000 and 500,000 service hours. Now, if you quantify that, that's going to be $7 to $8 million worth of time that we are going to be giving back to our community. And that is very significant. Every month, we'll have a new theme, and those themes will be, March will be Spring into Action Month. And every month, you can go on and you can find out what activities are going on in our city. And we want to make sure that our city is known for volunteering throughout the state of California. When you sign up, you will get a bracelet that says, Be the Change, just for signing up. Be the Change. Just for signing up, you're going to get a wristband that says, Be the Change, because our president has told us time and time again that we are the change that we've been waiting for. So we in Sacramento get a chance to raise that bar really high. The moment you complete 10 hours of community service, you'll get a t-shirt that'll say something really cool on it, but to let everyone know that you've done your 10 hours. And then for those who want to do even more, you'll get a sweatshirt. If you do 40 hours, you'll get a sweatshirt. And we just came from the high school a little while ago, and all these high school students said, we're going to do 40 hours. So if you do 40 hours, you'll get a sweatshirt that'll say something really cool on it. And then for those who go above and beyond and want to set the bar extremely high, for those who do 100 hours of community service, they'll be invited to an event with the mayor and elected officials at the end of the year, and it'll be a big kind of culminating project for all of us. So I'm really excited about that. Let me just really quickly acknowledge our partners. You'll hear a little bit later from Hands On Sacramento and our community council. Let's give a round of applause for Kathy Chow. Now, Kathy on Friday was speaking perfectly clear. Everything was great. And then I told her she had to speak, and now she has laryngitis. So pitch hitting for her today is Ben Webster. Stand on up, Ben. Our very own Congresswoman Doris Matsui has agreed to be our honorary chair, and she brings her greetings. Again, what we're trying to do is when you think about the Conservation Corps during FDR, then you think about the Peace Corps in terms of JFK, and then you think about the Clinton era with AmeriCorps and what we're doing citywide, a National Service Corps. President Obama said he's going to continue that commitment even more so. So that's the federal level. At the state level, we're doing great things with the state and talking to Maria Shriver and First Lady, but we as a city want to do our part, and I'm just very thankful to Congresswoman Doris Matsui. The other person I want to thank really quickly is none of this would be possible without our sponsors. So in a short period of time, I went to 3 sponsors, asked them to help and be co-chairs, and they agreed to. First, let's give a round of applause for AT&T and Kathy McKim. Sierra Health and Chet Hewitt. And the one and only Felix from Wells Fargo. So let me close with this. Now's the time that during these dire times that we need to lend even more of a hand. And we as a city need to show what we are made of. Let's set the bar high. Let's make Volunteer Sacramento something we're very proud of. And let's lead the state when it comes to service hours. The reason why we did this is that all of you who work in the nonprofit sector and do community service work, you guys are working your tail off. And we knew you needed more assistance. That's why we gathered and started Volunteer Sacramento. It's to help you do the valuable work that you do in our community. And I told a quick story about my grandfather and how we would pull over on the side of the road and help anybody who ran out of gas or had a flat tire. And that was his way of volunteering and always giving back. But also you can give financially as well. And we didn't have a lot of money growing up in the Oak Park community. But on this one evening, I would go to bed about 9:30 at night. And this one evening, my grandfather woke me up about 11 o'clock, told me to get in the car. I was asleep, hopped in the car, and we went driving from Oak Park to where the projects are, CV Circle projects on Broadway and 5th. And I didn't realize what projects were at the time, but anyway, nonetheless. I get in the car, we go on a drive, we pull up to this apartment, and my grandfather gives me $20. And mind you, we didn't have a lot of money, so $20 was probably equivalent to like a $200 bill. So he gives me $20, and he tells me to go knock on apartment 2C. So I go up to 2C, I knock on the door, a lady opens the door, she looks down at me, I don't know her, I look up at her, I hand her $20, she starts crying, I run back in the car, hop in the car, look at my grandfather like he was crazy, and he just puts it in reverse, takes me home, doesn't say a word, tells me to get back into bed, and I was tired, and he was crazy, and he gave away $20. I get in bed, and he didn't say anything about it. Of course, when I wake up the next morning, I don't even remember it. 2 years later, my grandmother tells me what happened that night. 2 years later. It was 2 days before Christmas. You guys remember Dick Cable? So on the news, at the 10 or 11 o'clock news, Dick Cable would come on and talk about things that would happen in Sacramento. And his family, their house had got robbed. And all the Christmas presents of a single parent and her 8 children all got stolen. And my grandfather saw this news story. And they said at the bottom of this newscast, here's the address. If you want to help out, go give a donation. So we gave our $20 to this lady. And that's why she was crying, because she was so thankful. But my grandfather's act of kindness, it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And those little things that he instilled in me at a young age are what make this city so great. There are thousands of these acts of kindness all over the city of Sacramento. Let's bring them all together and have our city be known for volunteerism. And I'm just so thankful to my grandfather for instilling in me the importance of being a public servant. Today, I am proud to bring to the podium a person that we all have heard of, probably rooted for many years. This person, for 40 years, he's been giving his life to service, civil rights, education, poverty, poor people. For 40 years, his whole life being given to those who don't have a voice. I think most of us remember, we're coming out of Black History Month, but most of us remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated. There were a few trusted individuals that were on that balcony with Reverend Martin Luther King. This gentleman was one of them. Not only was he on that balcony on that day, but he picked up that torch and that baton, and he's been carrying it for 40 years. And he's been doing everything he could through Rainbow and the Push Coalition, again, standing up for union and workers, fighting a good fight for children and students and nurses all over this country. And in 1984, he ran for the President of the United States, and in 1988 also ran for the President of the United States. Barack Obama, who's our president today, is standing on this man's shoulders. Because had he not broke down those barriers and been a trailblazer, there's no way, in my estimation, that we'd have the president that we have today. Ladies and gentlemen in Sacramento, let's give a round of applause to the one and only Reverend Jesse Jackson. Very well today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, KJ, for such a kind and generous introduction. To have a mayor so young and so vibrant, who brings so much home to his hometown, whose capacity to serve is outstanding. We do not yet know what his leadership will mean to all of us, not where it will take us. But I tell you, give your mayor a round of applause. Don't take him for granted. Give him a big hand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Put your hands together. We were blessed earlier today to meet with some ministers and officials to tell them things that we thought that the churches could do. I suppose, as President Bush put it, 1,000 points of light, so much each of us can do. And volunteering takes so many forms. If there's any one thing I've learned about it across the years, you cannot give without receiving. And you cannot take without losing. There's something called the divine law of reciprocity. You really can't give without receiving. Kevin got more back than the $20 he gave. You can't give without receiving. The thing about his role now as mayor of your city, making the transition from professional basketball, he began to build a reputation beyond points on the court for what he did for his own high school. And I would make the case today that he's probably a mayor not because of his fame on the basketball court, but what he did with it, how he used his celebrity to shine light into dark places and heat into cold places. It was the use of his skills and will beyond the court that made somebody say, I can trust him, not just admire him. We admire all the great athletes who do what they do. But can we trust them beyond shooting, hopping, skipping, and jumping? And so it was his giving beyond the court back to the flower that once fed him that made someone say that he can be trusted. It started by giving, by feeding the flower that he robbed. Honeybees are said to be brainless, no honeybee surgeons. no Dr. Honeybee, and yet there are no slum honeybee hives. And there are no honeybees shooting down other honeybees. What the honeybees know that we don't know. When they get their nectar from a flower, they don't just fly away to some suburb, some faraway place. They don't just got mine, got yours again, and fly away. They drop pollen when they picked up nectar, when they picked up the pollen. Because they know in time that as sure as they fly away, they will grow empty. And they will have to fly back. If the flower that they robbed was not fed, the flower would die, and they would die. And so honeybees have enough sense. Brainless honeybees, by instinct or by some force, they feed the flower that they rob. It's really a law of reciprocity, of reinvigoration. And so we learn from that. Dr. King would often say that we all cannot be famous or well known. We all can serve. We are called to serve. We cannot all be well known, but we can all be great because we can all serve. I should never forget a statement we used to make over and over again in my church that children remember, say children, repeat children, remember more where you took them than what you bought them. Repeat children, remember more where you took them than what you bought them. No doubt his grandfather bought him clothes and athletic gear and the like. But that didn't stick out in his mind. It's the night he took him someplace to begin to inject into his veins a sense of character. And that's at the heart of volunteering, because you don't have to do it. Volunteering is a matter of choice. It's character building. It's the test. It's going beyond the lines of race and religion and region. We remember a guy, the Atlanta Journal, in the deep, dark days of segregation, would write columns about how wrong it was. It was his way of, and risking. He gave his pen and his mind to breaking down barriers. That was his form of volunteering, and for that he was roundly attacked. But ultimately, we remember Ralph McGill because of he passed the character test. Sometimes it is as simple as teaching someone to fill out a job application. Many people can't do that. My grandmother, I remember when I first ran for the presidency, that she was not going to vote for me. And not because she didn't love me, my grandmother could neither read nor write. And the vote meant that she had to go downtown and put an X by her name. By the time she was Mrs. Burns, she had some stature in the church, and she knew some people knew her. She knew the precinct workers, and to go there and mark an X was embarrassing to her. I literally had to take her downtown bodily because I was the answer to her prayers, and she was afraid of the answer when she got it. Because she had so much to offer, so much advice, so much wisdom, and yet she was not willing to give it. But somebody had to help her mark that X, and they didn't get paid for it and for the service they rendered. I remember one embarrassing moment. It was, I talked a lot about the power of literacy and how strong minds develop and build people. When I was in LA, rushing the airport as it were to come to Sacramento for some march. And the driver, he talked, and when I wouldn't talk, he just kept talking, and he was describing scenes, and he just kept talking, and he was a friendly guy, so I tried to give him some conversation. And we was flying the commuter that flies here. And it's the first commuter when you're first coming to LA Airport. Which is that, the first one? Southwest, I suppose. And he drove right past. We were running late. I was telling him he was hitting a few red lights for me. He was running late. He drove right past it. I said, man, you just drove past the red light. I mean, past the airline. I said, I'm sorry, I was talking. And he kept talking. And we went around, and he came back. He's about to drive again. I was about to go off on him because I said I was late, and you won't stop talking. He couldn't read. He was trying to get from me a conversation to say, stop here. He was a driver. He could not read. So just to help somebody fill out a job application, there'll be jobs coming. Even some, there may be the construction jobs coming, but somebody who's qualified to do the work just can't read. So helping them fill out an application is a big, the many retired teachers, and not teachers as it were, can help just in that way. I'm urging all young youth, young blacks in particular, to learn to speak Spanish. The 100 largest cities in America today are majority black and Latino. And all across the South, that new population is changing the demographics in the face of the South. And the gap between blacks and Latinos is often greater than between blacks and whites, because at least we share the same language. And so in the language barrier comes a lot of fear and violence. Whenever there are walls, on the other side of that wall is ignorance and fear, hatred, violence. We see it manifest itself most acutely now in the LA jails, where there's such a great division between blacks and Latinos. But it's unfounded fear. And it should not be ignorance. And it should not be hatred about it, because somebody here can go to X church and get members who will volunteer to learn another language to teach them just the basics. Some of us can't get beyond CC Puede, but at least, yes, we can. It works for the president, and maybe it works for us. CC Puede. But the point, even to volunteer to hook up with ex-reverend, to give 2 hours a Saturday on just the basic of being able to say hello, how you do, goodbye in another language, helps reduce another fear. And so that is another point of light, teaching a language. To take some kid on a trip to the valley where his or her food is grown, or to LA, wow, or to see the Golden Gate Bridge for real. I met a certain basketball player, Kevin, who should remain nameless at this point, is quite famous out of Chicago. And I had some suspicions, knowing his background, his environment. And I said to him, you are good, you're gonna make the pros, you're gonna make a lot of money real soon. And I said, have you ever been to Comiskey Park? That's where the White Sox play. He said, no, sir. You ever been to Wrigley Field? He said, one time we won the championship, went up and we sang it, take me out to the ball game at halftime. I said, have you ever been out on Lake Michigan? He said, no, sir. Have you ever been in Sears Tower? He said, no. I mean, we take 150 kids a year to visit the South, the historically black colleges across the South. And 3/4 of them have never seen Lake Michigan, live in Chicago. Like kids growing up in LA who have never seen a movie set. Or kids who are here who've never seen the Golden Gate Bridge. The impact that we can do more, have more impact by caring and where we take them than what we give them. Morally, we can't help, as I said, without being helped. When Mary was in trouble and confused about her pregnancy, as our theology goes, with Jesus, and she didn't know what to do, and Joseph did not believe her, it was incomprehensible to him. And they were about to break up. He was about to embarrass her and make her ashamed. She went to Elizabeth, an older woman, as it were a retired mother. And she, being a woman, having been the way the girls are now coming, said, here's what's happening to you. So just while we disparage age, with it comes wisdom, with it comes experience. And so even to be a source of advice, to be able to talk to pregnant girls in school. You've been there, and you know what that's like, and to help them process, because some girls bounce back from pregnancy and regroup and to go on to higher. I'm the son of a teenage mother. was the daughter of a teenage mother. Some wise woman along the way says, here's how you handle your situation. A teenage mother and an older father. And the older mother understood that dynamic between older men and younger girls, and therefore was willing to share with my mom some wisdom. And so all these points of light. What I like to think in closing, really, is that with so many kids needing drug recovery. I was out in Inglewood after the mother of Jennifer Hudson had been shot, and her brother and nephew. And at midnight, thereabout, I was leading a prayer circle in front of their house. About 35 young men walked up to me, and I knew they were basically gangbangers. And they were little 14, 15-year-old gangbangers, but little boys acting like little violent men. He looked at me face to face, and he began to cry. He became a little boy in the face of a man. And he said, I want to get well, but they've closed the detox centers. That's a fight worth fighting too. Until this young guy said, Reb, you know, beyond that, we just came from the joint and we can't get a job. Because they've just come from the joint, there are about 60 jobs that they cannot have. Because they're felons, often they cannot drive cabs. They cannot work at a hospital. They cannot work at a fast food restaurant. They cannot work for the government. There are about 60 jobs that they cannot have. Where do they go except back to jail? Unless somebody gives them a second lease on life, it may be giving them a job to help them learn how to go to work for the first time. And I thought in Chicago, 85% of all the kids are on free lunch. That means they qualify for poverty based upon their parents' condition. So 85, and so I said to myself, you know, if they go to school, they get 5 free meals a week. They go to jail, they get 21 meals a week. And in the Chicago winter, it's warm on the inside. Organized recreation and adult supervision, even to give some time to some young inmates, to convince them how not to go back once they get out, because 75% of them go back. The jails are built on recidivism, not just built upon the first time. They're built on going back because you came back, you're stigmatized, and people push you away. And maybe that embrace is the difference between going high and going low. Today, as we fight, much of our work is volunteering, even as we fight the political structure. You know, I said to ministers, there's the church work, and there's work of the church. And part of it is to change the conditions under which we live. That's volunteering too. I'm looking at so many young people today. How many of you got a college loan? Raise your hand. You got a college loan. Raise your hand, real. I got a college loan. Just briefly, how much do you owe? How much do you owe? 20? 60? Raise your hand. Boy, this is important. 45? 220. Now, because I have to take us there, is that here we are, federal banks can borrow money at 3% and sell student loans at 6%. That's scalping tickets. In top, banks can get 0% money and make loans to students at 12%. Why should banks get money for free and charge a fee? That's fighting back too. And you raise about the most guys and ladies marry classmates. So you got a $130,000 debt you marry into poverty. Well, when you mention President Barack Obama, his job is not just to inspire us to volunteer, but to change the structure of things. And that means volunteering to fight that fight, to have equal access to education. I mean, there are many points of light on this. And I would say volunteering is always gratifying. Even when you think your best is not good enough. You never know the seed you plant, where it's going to germinate. The joy of my life at this point in my life as I travel around the country is to see somebody who I didn't know. Say thank you for something I know I did. I was on this panel with State of the Black Union on this past Saturday in L.A., and some young lady who I didn't know, I think her name was Meriwether, she went to talk. She started crying. Said, I spoke to some high school in Baltimore. You don't speak at high schools for fees. Every time as I spoke at Sac High today, I do 3 or 4 high schools a week and 3 or 4 jails a month just as a part of what we do. And she began to say she came out of a tough home situation and she heard I am somebody and she regrouped her sense of self-esteem. And now she's a writer for the Washington Post. You never know when these seeds you plant are going to germinate. And I remember my biggest Christmas in my life is my mother was a kind of natural-born social worker. And in my town, her finishing the 11th grade was a big deal. At that time, high school was only 11th grade when she graduated. And so she would just, as a Christian duty, help people who couldn't help themselves. And so there was this guy named Mr. Dave, who was a World War I veteran, who was due his charity check, they called it at that time, but he couldn't read and couldn't write. And she would work it through with him and walk back and forth downtown with him and fill out his papers, that write him back, and he would write back and send all of his Army data of service. And then on this one Christmas, my father was removed from his 3 jobs he had working for one man because of some dispute. Mom was sick, and there was a service at the church where you sing and give fruits and exchange gifts at Christmas time. And so Dad said, we shouldn't go because we don't have anything to give. I mean, we can't take a gift. We can't take a fruit basket or a handkerchief or a necktie. Mom said, that's just an excuse you have not to go to church. We're going to church. Because even if our 2 boys and I, even if we sing in the choir, the 4 of us help fill up the church. We help Reverend Sample just by being at church. We help inspire someone. And that night, when it was over, they couldn't exchange gifts, but they gave my parents a fruit and some nuts and the like. And we walked back home. I envisioned now walking across town. And we got up to our little duplex house and walked up the 11 steps. About 6 bags of groceries in front of our door. And we knew it was a mistake because we had not shopped. And we were living at 6A, we knocked on 6B. So Mr. Scott, somebody made a mistake, and they left their groceries here because at that time, one job you could have, KJ, was to be a grocery delivery truck driver. That was a big deal at that time. We figured the grocery deliverer made a mistake. And so Mr. Scott said, no, somebody left it for you. And there was no writing on it. So Dad said, we can't leave it on the porch or table. We'll put the fruits and the cookers and all up on the tree. We'll put the meat in the Frigidaire so it won't spoil. And you just hold these bags and said to my brother and I, don't you touch these fruit. I know they're tempting, but they don't belong to you. He was in his always teaching character. What's important, don't steal. I know those fruits are there. And I know how many oranges in the basket, and how many bananas. Don't touch, they don't belong to you. Somebody made them, and they will come back and ask for them. About 3 days later, Mr. Dave came by and said to my mother, said, Helen, you know, these boys are so sorry. Here you are, you can't hardly walk, hurt your back working. And here they are, didn't even help you put up the groceries. The groceries are on the floor, on the tree, and they should be put in the cabinet. Mama said, it's not their fault this time. Somebody made a mistake and left these groceries here, and we had to hold them till they asked. He said, I left them here. Mama said, why didn't you leave a note? He said, but Helen, you know I can't write. The notes, my charity check came. I was able to give you, I know you and Charlie didn't have a job, and so I gave you back some of what you had given to me. Volunteerism never works, never loses. It's a character builder. It makes Sacramento greater. There are no limits to what you can do just by caring and giving and sharing. Thank you very much.
All right, let's give another round of applause for Jesse Jackson.